Grad School 101 with Dr. Bradbury.
Hi, welcome back to Grad School 101. Today we're continuing our series on the elements of your application for a graduate school application in psychology. And we are here today to talk about your CV or your resume. So, that CV word. I know, when I start to talk about a resume, all of my students are like, oh yeah, I got one of those. I know what that is. And then as soon as we start to talk about a CV, everybody gets real intimidated because it starts to feel like you're supposed to have stuff on there that's not on there yet. Okay? But don't worry, your first CV really gets created when you're applying to graduate school. And I remember the feeling of kind of translating my resume into a CV. I was like, oh, this looks sparse and small and lonely now. But I now understand much better what a CV is expected to look like at different developmental stages. So know that a CV gets pretty long pretty quickly. And so one of the things that I want to advise you to do right off the bat is when you're creating your CV, I want you to think about creating one omnibus document that's going to be your overall CV that's going to have everything in it. And that's going to be the first thing that you're going to do is create this very comprehensive version of your CV. Don't worry about whether or not all those things are supposed to be in it. Instead, use this as a place to keep track of every single little tiny accomplishment that you have. Anytime you win any little award, anytime you get a great A in a class, anytime you accomplish something, I want to see that get tossed onto your CV so that you can actually say, oh yeah, I've got a really comprehensive list of all of the different things that I've done. Now, what I select out of that comprehensive list to put onto a particular CV is going to really depend on the nature of the purpose for which you're actually making the CV, right? So these days, I have a CV that goes on for many, 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 many pages. It's like dozens of pages long at this point. But most of the time, nobody wants to see that thing. Who on earth would want to look at all of those pages? So instead, they actually ask for subsets, right? So I have a teaching CV, and I've got a research CV, and I've got a clinical CV, right? And I've got a short, brief CV, right? That type of deal. So know that this is what is going to be expected of you over time. It's not going to be the case that anybody expects you to have like a big, long list of publications right now. How on earth would you have obtained those? I don't know. And if you are somebody who's got a big, long list of publications, I don't know that you'd be needing to listen to this Grad School 101 video. You already know what to put on your CV. It's all that professional stuff you've already done. But for most people, when you're an undergrad, instead, what you've got to be thinking about is that the stuff that you have done absolutely counts, okay? So students often ask me, but that was just a volunteer position. I didn't even get paid for it. Well, of course that still counts. You still did the work, of course. And it's not the case that you'd have to just list things that you have gotten paid for. You also don't have to just list things that are directly, tightly pertinent to psychology. How many people right now that I am talking to are going to have very psychology pertinent jobs? Well, fewer of you probably than we might assume. But the fact is that actually most of those jobs that you have are going to have some level of relevance. It's just that they're going to be jobs that aren't directly relevant. So, for example, when I was actually writing my CV to apply to graduate school, what had I done so far? Well, what I had done was I had done a whole bunch of daycare work, as I worked at daycare centers most of the time that I was in college. So I had lots of experience working with what we refer to as normally developing children, right? And so, of course, I had that experience was on there. And then, of course, I had all the academic stuff that I had done, right? So here's the paper that I wrote that was part of a tutorial that was a little bit more kind of like an honors thing to do, right? That kind of thing. Anything that you've done, really, you can go ahead and include it. And then if you decide you've got too much, if you're like, oh, well, this thing's like 3 pages long and I really want it to be a little tighter still, then you can figure out what to jettison, what you don't actually need to include on there. And when you do jettison it, don't jettison it off of the big document that you've already created, right? Make another document that goes ahead to make a subset of those things that you really want to display on your list. Now, the things that really matter in terms of your CV, If you're applying to Research One universities and you want to get into a PhD program in clinical psychology, it is definitely the case that you're going to need to flesh out some serious research involvement in your CV. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll have any publications, but anything that even counts as like a presentation, for example, even if it was a presentation in-house here in the psych department or somewhere else at UT, even if it was part of an academic program that required you to give a presentation, right? Anything like that is a really good thing to include because it shows that you actually have preliminary experience in the areas that we're going to expect you to get more experience in while you're a graduate student. You're going to get better and better at publishing and at presenting while you're a graduate student. Anything that shows us that you've dipped your toe into that world is a nice thing to include. If you've attended conferences, conference attendance is a great example of something that drops off of a CV after a particular period of time. Usually by the time you're done with graduate school, you don't have to keep including that you've just attended conferences. Instead, it would be, well, did you present at that conference? Did you have a poster at that conference? Those things will be reflected in those sections of the CV. But if in fact you haven't actually presented at the conference or had a poster, but you've just attended, that's still something that you can put on your CV now that would absolutely be considered a legitimate piece of information to include. So don't feel like you have to sell yourself short. This is one of the main messages that I really want to get to my students when we talk about what goes on a resume or a CV, is that of course you don't want to include like information from high school. That's got to go. Okay, so this is the time when your high school information will drop off. I no longer have my high school graduation and my high school information from where I graduated and that kind of thing on my CV. And it hasn't been for a long time because when it dropped off was when I applied to graduate school. So you want to go ahead and take all of that stuff from high school off of there and instead start fresh in terms of all of the things that you've done while you've been an undergraduate at UT. My bet is that, in fact, if you start to really think about it and start to think comprehensively, right? Start to kind of open up yourself to including more things that you've done. And instead of worrying that somebody's going to look at it and say, what? This isn't legitimate. Why on earth would you include this? Okay? Remember, the weird thing about me is that I don't listen to the no people. You can be that way too. I don't listen to people when they give me a lot of negatives and like look down their nose at me and judge the kinds of things that I do. Instead, I say, well, I included this because I really wanted people to know about it. I wanted people to know what kind of stuff I was doing, right? And if you feel like it's something that you want to include, do it. Because my bet is that a lot of people really will feel the same way that you do about it. So don't listen to the no people as much. Listen to the yes people. That's my advice to you. All right. So get out there, do a CV, have some people look at it, have them review it, right? Bring it by. You're welcome to bring a CV by my office hours. I look at CVs all the time. I've seen a lot of them. And so this is one of the things that I'm more than happy to do for students. We have many people at the university who are happy to look at your CV with you. This includes the Writing Center. It also includes the Career Center and almost any advising office in your major. So know that there are lots of people out there actually who would be more than happy to look over that CV and probably give you some critical feedback. Critical feedback, not hard to find at UT, it turns out. All right. Good luck to you. Thank you for tuning in. And of course, come back again soon.